Commander Thrax 9 of the Krillian Bone Crushers stared at the holographic display showing Earth's orbital scans. After conquering 17 Deathworlds and surviving 3 Galactic Wars, this was supposed to be their easiest assignment yet. The blue marbles spinning lazily below them looked pathetically peaceful compared to their home world of Kirith, where volcanic eruptions were considered morning weather reports. "Threat assessment complete," announced Lieutenant Zeph of the Zenthari. Void Stalkers, his ice-blue skin gleaming under the bridge lights. Galactic Council classification, daycare center level. Dominant species shows no advanced weaponry, survives primarily on processed sugar derivatives, and their highest recorded conflict involved disputes over recreational activities. Sergeant Vex of the Morgul Acid Spitters let out a dismissive hiss. Their atmosphere is 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. How do they even breathe that weak mixture? On Morgul Prime, we need at least 40% methane just to feel comfortable. The briefing data scrolled across their screens like a comedy of errors. Earth's inhabitants apparently spent most of their time in climate-controlled structures, consumed liquid stimulants to maintain consciousness, and considered wet floor signs their most sophisticated warning system. Intelligence reports suggested they voluntarily gathered in large groups to observe other members of their species engage in competitive physical activities while consuming fermented plant matter. "Sir," called Navigation Officer Krex. Barely. Containing his amusement, the locals have designated something called a Disney World Zone as their primary cultural center. Thermal scans show massive structures dedicated to entertainment. They appear to have built artificial mountains, solely for the purpose of rapidly descending them in wheeled contraptions. Commander Thrax 9 shook his armored head. In his 3 centuries of military service, he'd seen civilizations build monuments to their gods, their dead, and their conquests. Never had he encountered a species that built monuments to fun. Navigation. Set course for these coordinates. Operation Easy Vacation commences in 30 standard minutes. The 1,000-strong fleet of elite Deathworlders began their descent toward what Earth's inhabitants called Orlando, Florida. Each warrior had survived environments that would liquefy most carbon-based life forms. The Krillians regularly bathed in molten lava and considered temperatures below 200 degrees Celsius uncomfortably chilly. The Zenthari hunted in the frozen void of space itself, their natural habitat being planets where nitrogen froze solid. The Morgul had evolved on a world where the rain was sulfuric acid and the air was poisonous to 99% of known life forms. As their ships approached the landing zone, Tactical Officer Yemaum reported the local conditions. Current E. Atmospheric temperature, 35 degrees Celsius. Humidity, 90%. Solar radiation, moderate. Local time indicates mid-rotation of their 4th day in the 7th month. Practically Arctic conditions, muttered a Krillian pilot. We'll need to adjust our environmental suits to prevent hypothermia. The gravity is barely 60% of standard, added another warrior. We might accidentally leap over their primitive structures. The landing coordinates locked onto what appeared to be a vast open space surrounded by colorful totems and primitive transportation vessels. Geometric patterns painted on the ground suggested some form of organizational system, though its purpose remained unclear. Massive cylindrical structures rose in the distance, clearly defensive fortifications disguised as recreational facilities. "Beginning final approach," announced the fleet commander. "All units prepare for Operation Easy Vacation. Expected mission duration, 72 standard hours. Resistance level, negligible. Remember, we're here to assess their species for potential conscription into our mining operations. These humans show promise as manual laborers, given their apparent ability to survive in such a mild environment." The first transport ships touched down in Universal Studios' parking lot on July 4th weekend, their occupants completely unaware they had just landed in one of the most challenging environments their species would ever encounter. The Deathworlders, who had conquered galaxies, were about to meet their match in the form of Florida summer humidity and theme park endurance trials, masquerading as family entertainment. The cargo bay doors hissed open, and Commander Thrax 9 stepped onto Earth's surface, expecting to find cowering primitives. Instead, he found himself face to face with a 70-year-old grandmother in a floral sundress riding a mobility scooter. She looked up at the 8-foot armored warrior and smiled. "Oh my, what an incredible costume. Are you here for the comic convention, honey? You'll want to head over to the Orange County Convention Center. But I think that's next weekend. Here, let me give you directions." Thrax 9 stared in bewilderment as she pulled out a folded map and began explaining traffic patterns. Behind him, Lieutenant Zeph watched a small human child approach his towering ice-blue form and offer him a red balloon shaped like a rodent's head. "This is for you, mister. You look really cool." Zeph's combat training hadn't prepared him for compliments from miniature humans. He accepted the balloon with the same solemnity he'd once used to receive battle honors. Sergeant Vex emerged from his transport to find a teenager, in shorts and flip-flops, asking if he needed sunscreen. "Dude, you're gonna fry in that armor. It's like super humid today. Want some SPF 50? Within minutes, the most feared warriors in the galaxy found themselves being shepherded toward turnstiles by cheerful humans who assumed they were elaborate cosplayers. The Krillians, accustomed to striking terror into enemy hearts, discovered that small Earth children kept asking for pictures with them. "Sir," radioed Captain Torx, his voice tight with confusion, "we've encountered what appears to be a human military formation, but they're standing in perfectly organized lines, for hours, voluntarily." The queue for Space Mountain stretched beyond the horizon, filled with humans who showed no signs of rebellion despite the obvious psychological torture. Warriors who had broken enemy sieges through sheer intimidation found themselves shuffling, forward one step at a time, trapped by human politeness and their own inability to comprehend the situation. "This must be their endurance training," whispered a Xanthari scout. "Look how they maintain discipline despite the heat rising from the asphalt." Inside the haunted mansion, 3 Morgul acid spitters found themselves genuinely unsettled by animatronic ghosts, while the humans around them laughed and pointed. The ride's air conditioning provided their first relief from the oppressive atmosphere outside, though they couldn't understand why the humans willingly returned to the blazing heat afterward. The food courts proved to be the first real battlefield. Corporal Drex of the Krillians, who regularly consumed molten sulfur for breakfast, took one bite of a chicken wing and began frantically searching for water. His throat felt like it was melting from the inside out. "How do they consume liquid? Fire for pleasure?" he gasped, watching a human teenager casually devour an entire plate of wings while discussing weekend plans. The Xanthari fared even worse. Their first encounter with a convenience store slushie resulted in 3 warriors collapsing from brain freeze, a phenomenon their advanced medical training had never covered. Meanwhile, human children consumed multiple frozen beverages without showing any signs of distress. Sergeant Vex discovered that his acid-resistant biology offered no protection against funnel cake. The concentrated sugar caused his systems to go haywire, leaving him dizzy and confused, while a human family at the next table ordered seconds. "Base command," transmitted Lieutenant Zeph, his usual ice-cold composure cracking, requesting immediate clarification on local consumption habits. The natives appear to regularly ingest substances that would be classified as chemical weapons on most civilized worlds. "Confirmed, Lieutenant. We're observing similar phenomena fleet-wide. These humans seem to possess metabolisms specifically adapted to process toxins for recreational purposes." As the day progressed, the reports grew increasingly concerning. Humans were observed engaging in voluntary solar exposure while the aliens sought shade. Earth children ran and played in temperatures that had hospitalized 2 Zenthari scouts. Elderly humans power-walked through the parking lot at dawn, apparently for enjoyment rather than survival necessity. The breaking point came when Commander Thrax 9 overheard a conversation between 2 humans discussing their vacation plans. They intended to visit 4 separate entertainment complexes in a single day, walking approximately 15 miles in the process while carrying supplies and maintaining enthusiasm for the entire duration. Day 1 summary, he reported to the E-Fleet, his voice hollow with dawning realization. These humans may be more dangerous than initially assessed. They appear to have turned survival into entertainment. Day 2 brought the first taste of Florida's legendary afternoon thunderstorm. The sky darkened to an ominous black, and suddenly the atmosphere itself began attacking the Deathworlders with liquid projectiles fired at terminal velocity. "We're under bombardment!" screamed Captain Torx, as lightning split the sky with the force of orbital weapons. "The humans have weaponized their weather systems." The Zenthari ice warriors who had conquered planets in the frozen depths of space discovered that humidity was their natural enemy. Their armor, designed to retain heat in subarctic conditions, became mobile saunas. Within minutes, half the Zenthari contingent had collapsed from heat exhaustion, while humans around them continued their vacation activities, merely donning colorful plastic sheeting and calling it rain gear. Commander Thrax 9 watched in growing horror as a human family calmly discussed whether to continue shopping or wait out the storm in a gift shop. They treated the meteorological warfare as a minor inconvenience, debating ice cream flavors while lightning struck the parking lot 50 meters away. "Sir," gasped Sergeant Vex, his acid-resistant biology failing against the sheer volume of water falling from the sky. "Intelligence reports that humans call this weather pattern summer and consider it normal atmospheric behavior for this region. The Morgul, who had evolved in toxic swamps, found themselves overwhelmed by the aggressive humidity. Their environmental suits, calibrated for methane atmospheres, couldn't process the water-saturated air fast enough. 3 more warriors requested immediate medical evacuation after attempting to match human endurance during the storm." Day 3 brought their first encounter with Florida's native wildlife. While conducting reconnaissance near a golf course, the alien scouts witnessed something that would haunt their tactical reports for generations. A human male, approximately 60 Earth years old, feeding chunks of meat to creatures that could only be described as armored apex predators. "Those are clearly designed for combat," radioed Lieutenant Zeph. Studying the alligators through his scope, "Look at the armored plating, the jaw structure optimized for crushing bone, the predatory patience. And that human is offering them food voluntarily." The Florida man in question noticed the aliens watching and waved cheerfully. "Y'all want to see something cool? This big fella's been coming around for 15 years. Name's Elvis." He tossed another chunk of meat to a 12-foot alligator, like he was feeding a pet. The situation deteriorated rapidly when the reconnaissance team encountered their first palmetto bug. The 6-inch flying insect sent a Morgul warrior scrambling. For cover, his combat training useless against an enemy that could achieve aerial superiority, and showed no fear of his acid-spraying capabilities. "It flies," he transmitted in panic. "Repeat, their insects have achieved air superiority." The love bugs proved even worse, their kamikaze attacks fouling alien equipment and clogging air filtration systems. Fire ants turned the Krillians' armored advantages into liability, finding every joint and seam in their protective gear. Mosquitoes somehow bypassed the Zentharis' cold-resistant biology, leaving the ice warriors covered in welts and questioning their place in the galactic food chain. Meanwhile, humans jogged past the struggling aliens at 5 in the morning, apparently for recreation. Construction workers labored in the full sun during peak heat index, their only protection being colorful hard hats and bottles of water. Beachgoers voluntarily exposed themselves to solar radiation for hours, while the aliens desperately sought air-conditioned shelter. "Base command," reported Captain Torx, his voice cracking with fatigue. "We're observing human subjects engaging in voluntary solar exposure during peak radiation hours. Multiple subjects have achieved skin color changes that would indicate severe cellular damage, yet they appear pleased with the results and continue the activity." The casualty reports grew alarming. 50 warriors were down from various insect-related incidents. Another 100 had been hospitalized after attempting to match human theme park endurance. The Krillians discovered that their lava-forged constitution offered no protection against tropical punch flavoring, which seemed designed to overwhelm sensory organs. On day 4, the breaking point arrived in the form of Disney's It's a Small World Ride. 12 Morgul warriors entered the attraction and emerged 20 minutes later as psychological casualties. The repetitive audio warfare had broken their mental conditioning more effectively than any interrogation technique they'd encountered in 3 galactic wars. "The song," whispered Corporal Hex, his eyes wide with trauma. "It won't stop playing. In my head, they've weaponized music itself." Commander Thrax 9 convened an emergency council meeting in the only location they'd found with adequate air conditioning, a Disney World bathroom. Surrounded by colorful murals of cartoon characters, the galaxy's most feared warriors admitted defeat. "Status report?" he asked wearily. 700 casualties from routine human recreational activities, came the reply. "The humans aren't just surviving these conditions, sir. They're thriving. They're planning to visit all 4 entertainment complexes in a single-day cycle." The commander's armored shoulders sagged. "Signal the fleet. We're aborting Operation Easy Vacation before they discover we're not actually cosplayers." The great evacuation of Operation Easy Vacation began at dawn on day 5, with a 1,000-ship armada fleeing from what the Galactic Council had classified as a daycare center. The irony wasn't lost on Commander Thrax 9 as he watched his mighty fleet retreat from a theme park while humans in Mickey Mouse ears waved goodbye, still convinced they were witnessing an elaborate performance art piece. The evacuation itself became a nightmare of human bureaucracy. 300 warriors found themselves trapped at Orlando International Airport, discovering that Earth's transportation system required something called documentation and boarding passes. TSA agents, armed with nothing more than metal detectors and infinite patience, proved more effective at containing alien movement than any military force the Deathworlders had ever encountered. "Sir, they're demanding I remove my exoskeleton for additional screening," radioed a panicked Krillian warrior. "They want to know if my acid glands are over 3 ounces, added a Morgul sergeant. 200 warriors missed their extraction. Window entirely trapped by flight delays and connection issues. The humans running the airport treated the fleeing alien armada as nothing more than an unusual weather delay, announcing over the intercom that the Cosplay Convention Shuttle service was experiencing technical difficulties. Junior Scout Zix 9 of the Zenthari became the sole survivor through a combination of luck, stubbornness, and an unhealthy obsession with hotel ice machines. While his comrades fell to heat exhaustion, sugar poisoning, and psychological warfare disguised as children's entertainment, Zix 9 adapted by essentially hibernating in any refrigerated environment he could find. His testimony to the Galactic Council became the stuff of legend, a harrowing tale of survival against impossible odds. The council chambers fell silent as he recounted his 7-day ordeal in what humans called paradise. "Honorable Council," Zix 9 began, clutching 7 Mickey Mouse plushies as evidence. "I witnessed horrors beyond our understanding. The humans don't just survive their death world, they've made it more dangerous for entertainment purposes. They've weaponized leisure itself." His voice cracked as he described the true nature of human endurance. "I observed younglings consuming sugar spheres larger than their craniums and requesting additional servings. Their elderly don't seek comfortable retirement. They migrate to the most hostile regions of their planet and engage in something called power walking at temperatures that hospitalized our ice warriors. The council members shifted uncomfortably as Zix-9 continued his account. They've created artificial mountains solely for the purpose of rapid descent at lethal velocities. They call this fun. They construct chambers that spin occupants until they lose consciousness, then charge admission for the privilege. They've turned their planetary death traps into recreational facilities. Several council members fainted when he described the water parks. They've weaponized their own hydrology, creating rivers that flow uphill and pools that generate artificial tsunamis. Human larvae participate in these aquatic combat trials, while their parents observe from the sidelines, consuming frozen ethanol mixtures. The crushing revelation came when Zix-9 accessed Earth's global communication network. Council members, Florida isn't even considered their most challenging recreational destination. There are places called Six Flags that apparently make Disney look like a nursery. There is something called Vegas, where they've recreated multiple biomes under artificial atmospheric conditions and convinced their population this represents relaxation. The final piece of evidence broke the council's composure entirely. Zix-9 had discovered that humans deliberately seek out increasingly dangerous vacation destinations. They travel to active volcanic regions, dive into oceanic trenches, and climb mountains that would kill most species just from the atmospheric pressure. They call it adventure tourism. The truth, Honorable Council, is that Earth's safe zones are actually endurance trials. Every human settlement is a training ground for survival in conditions that would challenge our most elite forces. They're not just Deathworlders, they're Deathworlders who don't realize they're Deathworlders. The Galactic Council immediately reclassified humanity's threat level from Daycare Center to Galactic Threat Level Florida, and issued a fleet-wide advisory against any further contact with Earth's recreational facilities. Zix-9 became the galaxy's reluctant expert on human threat assessment, delivering lectures titled Surviving First Contact with Theme Park Humans to military academies across 7 star systems. His survival guide became required reading for any species contemplating contact with Earth. The final irony came months later when Zix-9's personal communicator kept receiving promotional messages from something called Disney Plus, apparently Earth's entertainment distribution system. Even after fleeing their planet, the humans were still trying to sell him vacation packages. The lone survivor's final report to the Galactic Council contained a single recommendation that would reshape interspecies relations for generations. Never underestimate a species that has turned surviving into a multi-billion credit entertainment industry. The humans have weaponized joy itself, and they're incredibly good at it. In the end, 1,000 of the galaxy's fiercest warriors had been defeated, not by human military might, but by human determination to have a good time despite living on a planet that was actively trying to kill them.